Billionaire CEO couldn't get a table on New Year's Eve until a single. Dad stood up and waved her over. The restaurant was called Alara. It sat on the 42nd floor of the Meridian Tower in downtown Chicago. And on any given Tuesday, a reservation required 6 weeks' notice and the right kind of name. On New Year's Eve, it required something more. Connections that most people spent entire careers trying to build, favors that powerful people saved for exactly this kind of occasion. Catherine Hale had both, or she used to. She stood at the entrance in her emerald green gown, diamond pendant catching the candlelight, one hand holding a navy blazer that didn't belong to her. She'd grabbed it from the back of her office chair out of habit when she'd left the building that afternoon, and hadn't noticed until she was already in the cab. Now she held it like a strange souvenir from a life that had ended at 2:14 p.m. on December 31st. The Metrid scrolled through his reservation screen with the practiced patience of a man who had delivered bad news to important people many times before, and had learned that the key was to never make eye contact too early. "I'm sorry, Ms. Hale. Your reservation was placed under the Hale Capital Group corporate account." He paused with professional delicacy. "Since that account was formally closed this afternoon, I'm afraid we're unable to honor." "I understand," she said quietly. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand to speak with the manager. CEOs didn't make scenes in public. That lesson had been drilled into her somewhere around year 5 of building her company, when she'd watched a competitor lose 3 major clients in a week because of one loud argument in an airport lounge. Former CEOs she was learning in real time especially didn't make scenes. The maitre d' offered a sympathetic smile that reached only as far as his cheekbones. "If you'd like, I can recommend." "No, thank you," Catherine said. "Happy New Year." She turned from the warmth of the restaurant and faced the lobby, which suddenly felt very large and very quiet. 12 hours ago, Catherine had been the chief executive officer of Hale Capital Group, a $4.2 billion private equity firm she had built from nothing, from less than nothing actually. She had started with a borrowed desk in a shared office space in Wicker Park, a single client who was more friend than investor, and a business plan that 3 banks had politely declined to fund. 18 years later, the firm had offices in Chicago, New York, and Austin, 41 full-time employees, a portfolio that spanned healthcare logistics, clean energy infrastructure, and mid-market manufacturing. And this afternoon, at a board meeting she had called to discuss Q1 projections, 7 of her 9 board members had voted to remove her as CEO, effective immediately. Restructuring, they called it in the official statement that her own communications team had drafted without her input. A strategic realignment to position the firm for its next phase of growth. The kind of language that was carefully engineered to mean everything and say nothing, to protect everyone and explain nothing. She had sat in that room and listened to the vote. She had shaken hands with people she had hired, mentored, promoted. She had signed the transition documents that her attorney had appeared with already prepared, already notarized, which meant this had been planned for weeks, maybe longer, while she had been in that same building trusting every single one of them. Then she had walked out into a December afternoon that felt shockingly ordinary. Taxis moved. People walked dogs. A food cart on the corner was selling hot chocolate and doing brisk business. The city had no idea. The city didn't care. The world had simply continued without adjusting. For the fact that 18 years of Catherine Hale's life had just been handed back to her in a manila envelope. She had told herself she would not cry until after midnight. Standing in the lobby of the Meridian Tower, watching well-dressed strangers move past her toward elevators and coat checks, she was failing at that promise. "Excuse me." The voice came from her left, from just inside the restaurant entrance. She turned. A man in a burgundy suit was half standing at his table near the window, one hand raised in a relaxed, unhurried wave. Not frantic, not performative. Just a simple gesture that said over here as naturally as if they'd made plans. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and a face that was handsome in an unassuming way. The kind of man who didn't seem to know or particularly care that he was good-looking. His posture was easy, comfortable. He had The kind of calm that didn't come from wealth or status. It came from somewhere quieter than either of those things. His table was set for 4. Only 2 place settings had been used. Beside him sat a little girl, perhaps 7 years old, wearing a navy blue velvet dress with her blonde hair pulled back carefully. She was watching Catherine with the wide, unfiltered curiosity that children aim at the world before they learn it's considered impolite. "We've got 2 empty chairs," the man said. "If you'd like to join us, no obligation." Catherine looked at him, then at the child, then back at him. "I don't," she started. "New Year's Eve alone is genuinely overrated," he said. "I say that as someone who tried it once. Terrible idea." He gestured to the chair across from him. "I'm Marcus. This is my daughter, Lily." Lily raised one hand in a small, solemn wave. Entirely serious. Entirely charming. Catherine Hale, who had negotiated 9-figure acquisition deals in Tokyo and London, who had sat across tables from senators and sovereign wealth fund managers, who had been photographed for the covers of Forbes and Fortune and once, improbably, Architectural Digest, and stood in the entrance of a restaurant and could not think of a single reason to say no. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Catherine." She sat down. Marcus ordered without once glancing at the prices, which Catherine noticed, not because he was performing wealth, but because he genuinely didn't seem to be thinking about it. He ordered the way people did when money had long since stopped being the most interesting thing about an evening. He asked Lily what she wanted, listened carefully, asked again when she changed her mind, and made sure she had sparkling water because, he explained to the waiter with complete seriousness, she's very particular about the bubbles. He did not pull out his phone, not once. "Do you come here often?" Catherine asked because she needed something simple to begin with. "First time," Marcus said. "Lily chose it." He glanced at his daughter with the particular fond expression of a parent who has genuinely been surprised by their child more than once. She saw photos of the view online and decided, this was where we should spend New Year's Eve. "It looks like a place where people make important decisions," Lily said without looking up from the bread basket she was evaluating. "Important decisions need important ceilings." Catherine looked up. The ceiling was vaulted, gilded at the edges, hung with cascading light fixtures that caught and scattered warmth across the whole room. "She's not wrong," Catherine said. "She's rarely wrong," Marcus agreed. "It keeps me humble." The food arrived in courses, beautifully plated, unhurried. They talked easily. Marcus didn't ask what she did for a living, which was so unusual that Catherine noticed its absence, the way you notice a sound that stops. For 20 years, every dinner party, every introduction, every cab ride with a talkative driver had begun with, "So what do you do?" It was the American greeting, the opening calibration. Marcus simply didn't do it. Instead, they talked about other things. Chicago winters, and whether they built character or just bad moods. Whether deep dish pizza was actually pizza or simply a very ambitious casserole. Lily's ongoing and apparently well-documented campaign to adopt a second dog, despite Marcus's stated and firm position that their current dog, one golden doodle, was entirely sufficient. "His name is Senator," Lily said to Catherine, in the tone of someone sharing important information, "because he talks constantly but never really commits to anything." Catherine laughed so suddenly she almost spilled her wine. A real laugh, the unplanned kind that comes from somewhere genuine, the kind she hadn't produced in longer than she could remember. "That," she said, "is the single best dog name I have ever heard in my life." Lily looked satisfied in the way that children do when adults confirm what they already knew. The evening moved the way good evenings do, without announcing itself, without demanding to be noticed. The restaurant filled and hummed. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Chicago spread in every direction, a grid of light stretching to the dark line of the lake. Somewhere between the entree and dessert, Catherine realized the tightness that had lived between her shoulder blades for months, maybe years, had loosened. She wasn't managing anyone's perception of her. She wasn't calculating how a comment might land, what a facial expression might signal, whether she was projecting the right balance of authority and approachability. She was just a woman at a dinner table, eating good food and watching a child passionately explain to a waiter why crème brûlée was objectively, scientifically, without reasonable debate, the superior dessert. "She's remarkable," Catherine said quietly, when Lily had turned back to the window to watch a distant cluster of early fireworks above the lakefront. "She keeps me honest," Marcus said. He turned his wine glass once in his hand. "Her mother passed away 4 years ago. Lily was 3. He said it the way people say things they've made peace with. Plainly, without asking for anything in response. No performance of grief. Just a fact about his life offered freely. She doesn't remember much, but she has her mother's way of looking at things. Sees right past whatever's on the surface." Catherine was quiet for a moment. "I'm sorry." "We're okay," he said. And the way he said it made it true. She looked down at her glass. Something about the simplicity of his honesty made her own feel possible. "I lost my company today," she said. "I built it for 18 years. This afternoon my board voted me out." She said the words slowly, testing their weight. It was the first time she had said them out loud. "I had a reservation here under the company account. That's why I was turned away at the door." Marcus was quiet. He didn't rush to fill the silence with comfort. "What was the best thing you built there?" he asked finally. "Not the largest deal. Not the best headline. The best thing." She thought about it. Really thought. The way she hadn't been able to think all afternoon, because the afternoon had been full of paperwork and phone calls from attorneys, and one very awkward conversation with her assistant, who had found out from someone else. "There was a team," she said slowly. "Year 3, 7 people. We were working a deal that everyone in the market thought was overpriced and under-researched. We stayed in the office until 2 or 3 in the morning. Every night for almost 2 weeks. We ordered bad pizza from the same place. Every night because nobody wanted to waste time choosing somewhere new." She smiled at the memory. "We argued constantly. Loud arguments. Real ones. The kind where people actually say what they think. And we closed the deal. But what I remember," she paused. "What I actually remember is the team. The way it felt to be in a room full of people who were all in completely." Marcus nodded, said nothing for a moment. "Then you already know how to do it again," he said. Not as encouragement, as simple observation. Catherine looked at him. Something in her chest shifted, some tight, knotted thing that had been there since 2:14 p.m. loosened slightly and let go. At 11:45, the restaurant began its New Year's preparations. Staff moved quietly, refilling glasses, bringing out small dessert plates dusted with powdered sugar. Lily abandoned her chair entirely and stood at the window with both hands pressed flat against the glass, looking down at the crowds gathering along the lakefront. A long, dark ribbon of people, hats and scarves and upturned faces waiting for midnight. "Daddy," she said softly. "The whole city is waiting." "For what?" Marcus asked. She thought about it seriously. "For something good to happen, I think." He looked at Catherine across the table. Catherine looked back. "I think she's right," Catherine said. Lily turned from the window and looked at Catherine with the clear, uncomplicated directness that belongs only to children, and people who have stopped pretending. "Are you going to be okay?" she asked. Catherine felt her throat tighten. This 7-year-old girl in her velvet dress, with her serious eyes and her important ceilings and her dog named Senator, this child had asked. The one question that no board member, no attorney, no colleague, not a single person in Catherine's professional world had thought to ask today. She felt the tears she'd been holding since 2:14 p.m. press against the back of her eyes. She didn't let them fall, but they were there, and she let them be there. "Yes," Catherine said. "I really believe I am." Lily nodded, officially satisfied, and turned back to the window. 10:08. The whole restaurant counted together. The waitstaff, the couples at corner tables, the large family group near the bar, the older gentleman who had been dining alone all evening and was now counting louder than anyone. 765. Lily climbed onto her chair. Marcus stood. Without thinking about it, without deciding to, Catherine stood too. 4, 3, 2, 1. The city outside exploded into light. Fireworks burst over Lake Michigan. In cascading waves of gold and white and deep crimson, their reflections stretching long and shimmering across the dark water below. Lily gasped, a pure, unself-conscious sound of joy, and pressed her palms against the glass as if she could reach through it. Marcus put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. Catherine watched the fireworks and felt the year behind her. The board meeting, the vote, the manila envelope. The 18 years not disappear but settle, become past tense, become something that had happened to her, and not something that was still happening. She was still standing. The city was still lit. The lake was still there, carrying every reflection it was given. They said goodbye in the lobby 20 minutes later. Lily hugged Catherine without warning or preamble, both arms around her waist, her velvet shoulder against Catherine's rib, and Catherine hugged her back fully, the way she hadn't let herself be held in a very long time. Marcus handed her a card. Simple. No corporate logo, no title, just a name and a phone number, printed cleanly in dark ink. For whenever you're ready to start the next thing, he said. I invest in people first. Everything else is secondary. Catherine looked at the card, then at him. You could have mentioned that at dinner. The corner of his mouth lifted. You weren't ready to hear it at dinner. She held his gaze for a moment. He was right. She knew he was right. She walked out through the lobby doors into the Chicago cold, the night air sharp and clean against her face. Above the buildings, the last of the fireworks were still fading. Slow, trailing sparks dissolving into the dark, and all around her the city was moving, loud and alive, full of people walking toward whatever came next. She had walked into that restaurant with nothing. She walked out carrying something she hadn't had in years. Not a plan, not a strategy, not a market position or a shareholder narrative. Just the quiet, steady certainty that she was exactly the right person for whatever came next. She tucked the card into her clutch, turned up her collar against the wind, and walked forward into the new year.